Help me, Tammy. Unlocking your power with freedom.
Unlocking power through freedom and nature.
And nature, because this is so new and exciting that I can't remember right now. We are all about positivity and possibilities and productivity. And we have Arvin Anderson, dear friend, mentor, and coach. And he is an amazing life coach. And he is focusing right now on relationships, specifically in the area of communication. Arvin, welcome here. Where are you from right now, and where are you right now? And then tell us about you.
I'm in Tulum, Mexico, living my best life.
It's so pretty there. I just see all that greenery and I'm like, yes, I want that.
Yeah, it's a very spiritual and healing and grounding environment here in Tulum. It's been very very nurturing for me since I've been here, which is why I came down here.
Okay, you said some key words there. Spiritual. What was it? Spiritual, and healing.
Mm-hmm. Grounding. Yeah. Nurturing.
Grounding.
Yes.
And so that means
spending time in nature, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then
it's got jungles here. It's got beaches here, and so it's got a variety of different elements, and it's been 85 degrees every single day, which is amazing.
Amazing. And then, so I'm taking that you chose to be there because you had already been there and you knew that place does that to you, like helps you with grounding, being spiritual, and nurtures you and heals you.
Yeah. So I came out here for the first time in November for a few days. And then I ended a relationship a couple weeks ago. It was a very intense, emotional moment that I was going through. And so I didn't want to be like in my environment for that. So I had a very close friend of mine that lives down here in Tulum. So I came down to stay with her for a couple weeks and just kind of heal through this process and find my center again. And then I'm heading back to Austin on Thursday to get back into my flow.
Yeah, it's amazing how nature does that. Yeah, and like Lori said, we're so sorry about that.
Oh, I don't need apologies for it. It's part of life, you know. That's the beauty of the experience of love, right? Like if you really want to experience love in its fullest capacity, it's not just the pleasure of love, but it's also the pain that comes with it. And so, even though the end of a relationship has a lot of intense pain that's associated with it, I also got to experience some incredible pleasure in ways that I've never experienced with a woman in my life. And so I'm grateful for those moments. And if I had to go through the pain again, I'd do it every single time because the pleasure side of it was that enjoyable.
Would you do it again with the same person?
I wouldn't do it again moving forward, but I would repeat the experience.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, now like energetically, we've closed that container. So it would just feel incongruent to open that back up, like in the energy that I'm in now. But would I repeat what we went through before? Absolutely. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
What specifically would you like to know? Ask me a good question. You can ask me anything. I'm an open book.
So just like, what did you do? What have you done? What do you do?
What do I do?
Where are you from?
Yeah, at this stage of my career, what I focus on primarily is one-on-one mentorship. Because I've been coaching for over 10 years and I've coached on pretty much every aspect of life that you can think about. And for me at this stage, you know, coaching and mentorship needs to be an all-inclusive experience because everything feeds into the other. Right? Like we can't talk about your business without talking about your relationship. We can't talk about your relationship without talking about your own inner work, your own personal development. and all of these things, they all flow with each other. So it's like in order to really be able to approach all aspects of your life with the fulfillment that you're looking for, we need to be able to talk about all aspects. And so at this stage where I'm at, being developed in all of the different areas enables me to create an all-inclusive experience for people that I mentor. And then in addition to that, periodically, I like to host in-person retreats, because there's personal development work. I used to work for Tony Robbins. And so it's like, we do a lot of mindset work in there, a lot of physiology work, and a lot of ways that like really change the way that you think about life, the way that you approach things. But there's only so much that you can do in that world. There's a depth of personal development that can only be had in very intimate containers, because it requires a very safe space. It requires hands-on type of facilitation. And when you can create that kind of container, that kind of experience for somebody where they feel safe to let go of whatever needs to be released or explore whatever needs to be seen, it's there that we can really create an experience that releases them from all the things energetically that are blocking them from what it is that they're trying to create. Because mindset will only get you so far. We've got to incorporate the energetic and emotional components along with it in order to create any kind of real growth that we're trying to create.
Exactly.
So that was my question with a loaded answer that I love, because I have been a witness of his mentorship and coaching. And even though in my experience, I was a group coaching opportunity and container, it was very a small number compared to a room of thousands of people. Mm-hmm. And he would pay attention and take care of each one of us. And if someone would present, and because we all felt so safe, if someone would share a personal issue, it was very beautiful that we also felt safe, because then that person's issue was probably one of our issues, or there was a way for us to incorporate it in our lives, in our own personal things. And then I've also been into one of these amazing world-class retreats where I've witnessed that energy work, that component that is so important. And in such again, small group, small container, where you can let go and Arvin just takes care of you, looks at you eye to eye, or with his resources that he brings in because he trusts them. And it just makes it a very enriching and nurturing. He's in nature, but and he feels spiritual. He feels grounded for what he needs there right now in this moment of his life with his good friend. But that's what I have experienced with him in his retreats. So and
I totally agree. I mean, just listening, you need everything. It's like taking all these little puzzle pieces and you put them all together, but we need all of that. And mm-hmm. I love how it's kind of like I was telling you before we got on here. It's like I use nature all the time, or art, and that's why I do 3D nature pieces more than anything. Is because when we go outside, we get that chance just to be ourselves and to breathe. Mm-hmm. And let go. Or like when Laurie and I had talked last week about, or be near water. Water, just the sound of it just does something for you. And it's like you forget everything else out there, all your problems. And sometimes you just need that release. Mm-hmm. So did you have a question for him?
Well, I want to ask Arvin right now. Basically, just to summarize a little bit what we've been saying, and then I want to say hello to Pam Garland. I am glad you're watching live, and if you have questions for Arvin, he is an amazing resource. So post those questions there. And also, if you're watching this replay, please tag and say a hashtag replay. And I'm sure you can post questions for Arvin, and I'll send them to him. Or Arvin, you're welcome to join our group, of course.
Actually, Arvin joined.
Yeah, great.
I believe you did. So unless I'm spacing out.
I have a challenge for you and your audience. And Pam, if you're still watching, I have a challenge for you as well. Awesome. I challenge you to ask me a question that makes you uncomfortable to ask.
Yes, that's the next thing. Arvin is great with uncomfortable conversations. But here's my question that I have for you, and maybe you can go from here to uncomfortable conversations. So you had this situation with your partner. You went there, running for or going forward to heal and to experience all this stuff in this sacred space that I think you're considering this, which is beautiful, and that's amazing. So I saw your Facebook posts about working out in this space where the equipment is of nature. Like, can you explain a little bit to us and share what was your experience being in that fitness gym, nature fitness gym?
Whenever you have any kind of suppressed emotion, the way that you move energy is through movement, sound, and breath. Right? You need to incorporate all three, and working out can be a very healthy way to move heavy emotion. And oftentimes when you're experiencing a lot of intense emotion or heavy suppressed emotion, the last thing you want to do is move. That's why we end up like sitting on the couch or like binge watching a show or just sitting on our phones. It's just like, the energy itself closes you and pins you to the ground. And so it's like we have to force ourselves into movement. And then anybody that's been in that experience where you're experiencing kind of intense emotion and you do move, you always feel better after. And for me, like I've been in health and fitness pretty much my whole life. I've been in sports and everything from a very young age until now. And so I love to work out. It's very therapeutic for me. And so here in Tulum, they have this jungle gym that's like their theme is the Flintstones. Right. So it's like everything is very like caveman type design. And so like you pick up a dumbbell and the dumbbell is like I can only use one at a time because they're so big. It would like literally crush my head if I tried to use two. And so there's these massive weights that aren't actually that heavy. And then everything is just set up in a very caveman jungle type environment. Yeah. And the sun's beaming down on you. You got, the jungle trees all around you. And it's just, very just therapeutic experience. Just being in the sun, getting a good sweat, moving out, just being in nature while you're also healing yourself.
It sounds like it. Sounds like my kind of workout place.
Yeah.
I like to enjoy just being outside, going on walks, but like you said, but if you can do something like lifting, which I do, just when we're designing our waterfalls and different things. I mean, I do a lot of gardening and stuff, and it's not light work.
Definitely not light work when you work out with me, that's for sure.
So it reminds me also of Rocky Balboa, when one of the movies, like one person was training in a very fancy, state of the art kind of facility, and he just was so angry and so motivated to just get this challenge, and he went to nature. He would just lift up logs of trees, etc.
Fought the Russian.
Right? The Russian. And I love that. I'm like, look, compare. And, he is just getting the same amount of training, the same amount of strength or more. He won, right? Rocky won.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it is so true. And I love, Arvin, how you went through that much pain and you wanted to release it. And that physical movement, how you taught us, and the breathing helped you. Where do you think you are in this process right now? You've talked a lot about healing. Are you on your way to it, or are you there?
Yes, it's a great question. So her and I, we technically we weren't together for very long. We were only together for a few months, but her and I were very well versed in intimacy and sexuality and communication and personal development. I went up through the Tony Robbins world. She was a facilitator for Landmark. So it's just like we have a very extensive skill set around going deep really fast. And so even though we were together for a few months, I reached levels of depth with her that I've never experienced with a woman in my life. But through connection, through sexuality, through all aspects of relating. So it was a very intense experience. And so when it ended, that was also very intense. It was one of, if not the most intense breakup I've ever gone through, just in terms of the, for lack of a better word, intense emotion that I was feeling. And so when we made the decision to end it, it was a very beautiful thing, right? Like we weren't in conflict, we weren't fighting or anything like that. There was just a couple variables that we weren't aligned on. And because of that, as the relationship went on, they started to shine a little bit brighter on our experience, and it became to the point that we couldn't ignore it. And so we just we had to make the conscious decision that these two things are things that we're just not going to be able to work through. And so we were able to end it in a very loving way, which sometimes can be even harder, right? Sometimes we try to create conflict so it gives us a reason to leave, versus we're actually in a really good place. There's a lot of love and passion between you and I, and we have to acknowledge the fact that this has a shelf life. And so let's just honor the truth of what's being told to us here and make the decision to walk away. And so we did. And so the next 48 hours was a very intense emotional purge for me. And so historically, I would just, especially as a man, I would just suppress emotion. It was just if I felt any kind of sadness, I would just stuff it down and just try to hold this stoic approach to it. But I've learned over the years how unhealthy that is. So for the next, the first 24 hours, I purged. And by purge mean I have an emotional release room in my house. I went in there and I just moved it. I do specific tools to move energy, and it just came out into very intense sobbing and wailing and yelling and just letting it all out, screaming out things and just purging and purging and purging. And
all this by yourself?
All this by myself.
All by yourself.
Yeah. I'm just letting it all I was allowing myself to feel everything, right? It's one of the mantras I have in the practice I teach in your Omega practice, which is feel it all and express it all. And so I let it all come out. And then after a couple of days of that, I finally got the bulk of the intensity out in those first 48 hours. And I have a very good friend of mine that lives down here in Tulum. And so I was talking with her, and she just kept telling me, she's just come to Tulum, let me help you heal through this process so you're not all alone. And I was all right. So I came down here, and just once I got into this environment, it just instantly started to create that next phase of healing for me. There was still a lot of sadness that was happening, right? There were still trickles of emotional release that were still coming out those first few days. And we were still communicating a little bit. And so we still were messaging a little bit for about a week. And then a weekend, I made the request of, I think it would be best for both of us if we just didn't communicate at all. It's just creating confusion for me. And if we are going to close this and heal from it, then I think we need to not communicate from there. And then when I made that decision, I had one last emotional purge from that, because it was all right, now we really are saying goodbye. And that's when it was able to really start to fully heal from that process. And this was about 2.5 weeks ago that we ended it. Now I'm I'd say I'm 82%. I feel really good, but I'm also been in Tulum this whole time. So when I go back to Austin, now we run a very similar circle. So it's very likely I'm going to run into her pretty soon, just because we have the same community. And so that'll be the next phase, right? Is how do we kind of maneuver through these next few weeks of seeing each other without being in connection. And so there's nervousness inside of my body around it. There's still, the little piece of me that wants to get back what we had. And so there's all these different elements of the experience that I'm still feeling, but I also have to stay committed to the truth of what I know is best for her and I in this moment. And, when push comes to shove, whenever I'm in any kind of moment where I'm being pulled in different directions, one of my practices is to sit in stillness and ask myself, what is the truth of my heart in this moment? What is really true for me? And just honoring that. And this is what's true for me right now. Doesn't mean that's what will be true for me tomorrow. But what I am devoted to is tapping into what that truth is, and then having the courage to follow what it says.
And I think you both decided together, right, to go with that truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have a quick question. So what is one tip that you would offer our audience
in regards to what?
Through this process?
A tip in regards to what?
To everything that you've just gone through, or one learning tip. What is the magic? What is the tip? Yeah.
It's kind of a challenging tip, right? Because
it's a very challenging.
Yeah. When I fall onto for simplicity purposes, if I'm going through a healing element, a big part of that's going to be in this Omega energy. And I operate under the lens of we embody alpha and omega energy, or masculine, feminine energy, however you want to look at it. And so whenever we're experiencing something where we're feeling something intensely, feeling is an omega energy. I feel. And so whenever we have something that we're going through, allowing yourself to feel it fully and to express it fully. The challenge with that is we do tend to suppress emotion, and we do allow ourselves to feel it a little bit, but we rarely ever allow ourselves to feel it fully because we don't really know how. And if somebody were to witness my experience, they would probably be like, holy shit. I'm sorry. I don't know if I can say that.
That was from your heart.
Yeah, like, oh my God, like that's really intense. Like I don't know if I'd be comfortable doing that. And it's like, well, this is what the body needs. You know, we've been told our whole lives not to behave a certain way. But, you know, if you look at a child that's still in their full expression, like I love watching children now because they feel it fully and they express it fully until we start telling them not to, right?
Yeah.
Like, be quiet, calm down, sit down, knock it off, go to your room, stop crying. And it's like, okay, well, let me just suppress my emotions then. I guess I'm not supposed to do this. And when you start to get into real emotional release, it's very childlike. Like one tool is actually throwing a tantrum, like laying on the ground and like stomping your hands and feet and like, and like just letting the sound out, just like releasing it. It's one of the many tools that I teach. But to do it with an untrained eye or in an environment that doesn't feel safe, nobody would do that.
Right.
Like, I'm not going to behave that way.
Or that somebody is in danger, like that the adult version of tantrum I've heard is called like thrashing, and it's just people throwing things. But you're talking about an intimate. Okay, I'm gonna go do this by myself.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're not hurting yourself. You're not throwing anything. Nobody around you is in danger.
Right.
It's a very intentional expression of emotion.
Right.
But the two emotions that we generally need to express that are suppressed are sadness and rage. And so we're going to express sadness differently than we're going to express rage. And rage, we're also told like that it's a violent expression. It's an angry expression. It's unhealthy. It's an unsafe. Like, don't ever express that. But we have that emotion alive in our bodies. So what are we supposed to do with it? If we don't release it in a healthy way, that's when we tend to release it in a way that we regret, where we snap at somebody or we hit something, or we just, just in an environment where somebody says something and you're already so built up with all this energy, you just unleash your fury on them and they're like, where the hell did that come from?
Right.
It's like, oh, it's because I've been bottling up all this emotion for days, weeks, months, years. And it's like, I'm filled up. Right. So it's coming out in all the wrong ways.
It's fear that holds us back. Fear that we're going to make a fool of ourselves. Fear that if we admit that we're hurting or angry.
You know what the most consistent answer I hear around the fear piece is? They're afraid what's going to come out.
Exactly.
And they're afraid on what's the other side of that. Like, I'm afraid to let it out because I don't know what it's going to look like when I do. And like, I don't know what's going to happen to me when I do.
Fear of ourselves, maybe also like that reaction and how we're going to react with ourselves after we see. I've gone through a lot in my life. And one way I think since childhood, I've done this version of what you teach so amazingly is in the shower, crying in the shower or talking to myself in the mirror. Like me talking to the other person in the mirror and using that. And that's been a way that I've kind of, without being taught by anyone, like I resorted to. It was effective, but I guess all this sounds, and it's going to resonate different with I don't know if I haven't experienced throwing myself on the floor.
I have not either.
Is it a good invitation, Arvin? You're going to invite us to do that anytime we feel hurt or pain?
The next retreat, you guys are welcome. We didn't do this stuff at the retreat that you went to, Lori.
I know.
But the last couple that I've done, we've done a lot of emotional release work because it's incredibly healing.
But, I agree. I mean, I do it in a different way. I go on a walk, usually by myself in the woods. We live where you can't see a neighbor. Okay. So it's like that freedom. I can express myself. And
but do you scream? What do you do in that walk?
I just usually talk to God, and I can cry. I can tell him all my frustrations and fears. And it's like, well, what am I doing? And help me. But,
So let me give you an analogy there, right? So if we look at emotion like a volcano, and in a volcano, you have all this lava. And as we suppress emotion, it's putting more and more lava inside of this volcano until eventually it starts to bubble, right?
Right.
And then it's just like, usually what will happen is some will spurt out the top, like we'll release a little bit, but we won't purge the whole thing. It's like just enough to get it to calm down. And so when we're filled up and we have this suppressed emotion that needs to be released, even doing something like journaling or going on a walk, all that's doing is calming it down, right? It's just like, okay, let me just breathe again. Let me just get my head above water, but it's not clearing it out. And
even when you write in your journal, like everything you feel?
No.
And my husband had cancer, and we went through a naturopath, and he did both modalities. And one of the first things they said is do anger, whatever it was, anger therapy or something, like go to a mountain and yell at all those teachers that made you mad when you were a teenager and a little kid, and all your siblings, or me as his wife, I'm sure I've made him mad many times. I don't think he literally did it at the time, but it was an interesting advice. So
it's, from my experience, it's set up like a ritual. It's a very it's a spiritual practice. So it's not like we're just sitting in a room like, okay guys, we're gonna emotional release. No, like we set the container, we set intentions, we set the mood, we use music, we create private sacred space for everybody. We show them how to work the tools, we work through it together, and then we will intentionally go through an elongated process to work through these for a certain amount of time, to give time for the emotion to come up. Because what will happen in the beginning is people get in their heads about it, right? As long as you're in the head, like the emotion's not going to move. So it's just like, okay, I'm doing this, or like, this doesn't work for me, or I don't like this, or this isn't me, or this is stupid, or like, I don't need to do this. I'm fine. I've already moved it. Like all this stuff's happening in your head. You're like, okay,
that will be me.
All right. Yeah. And so you just sit like, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh God, what was that? Oh. And then the emotion starts to awaken, right? And then it starts to come out. And then the head gets real loud, like, stop, don't do this. This isn't us. Just keep it in. And it's just like, stay in the body. And when the emotion comes up, it's usually not attached to anything. It's not like, oh, this emotion's coming up because of this thing that happened, right? There's rarely like a story attached to it. It's just like, if anything, you're like, what is this attached to? Where is this coming from? Like, where's all this emotion just like purging?
And we don't need to know, right? We don't need to know.
No, it's just suppressed energy in the body. That's all it is, right? And then once we clear all that out, this is when we can really start to be intentional about all this personal development work that we're doing, all this positivity that we're trying to bring into our lives, like focusing on the right things, thinking the right things, saying the right things. Great. We can bring all that energy in as long as there's room for it. But we've lived our entire lives suppressing emotion, and there's no more room. There's nowhere to put it. That's why so many people do these personal development paths and they don't really get very far, because they're missing this very important component. And there's very few places that can actually guide you through this type of experience, at least from what I've seen out there.
And you provide some of those places. Huh?
Yeah, awesome.
I provide it because I've already walked down this path multiple times. I've put myself into these rooms, and it's intense. It's the mindset stuff prepared me to go into these rooms to be able to do this depth of work, because you have never experienced fear to the degree that you'll face when you walk into a room like that.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So I love it. I love your mantras that feel it fully, express it fully, feel it all, express it all. And with your experience over there right now, Arvin, just to finish, because time goes by so fast when we're having fun, and this conversation with you, it has been great, and we want to honor your time. So then with positivity, since you've done the work, how do you positivity in your future? Like, where are you now? You've said you're in 82% of the healing, but then how in all this process you see with lenses of positivity, can you see positivity coming in your life, or do you feel it right now?
Of course. I'm very intentional about my energy, my emotions, and my thoughts. And so like I'm constantly tuning into what I'm feeling in the moment, because I am a big believer that you attract what you feel. And so if I'm wanting to create these elements in my life, whether it's, professional success or intimate love or any of those things, I know that I have to be consistently aligned to the vibration of that. And so my responsibility is to do whatever inner work that I need to do to stay consistent with that element. I mean, I still journal. I still write everything out. My recent practice was, getting clear on, right now I'm working on my money blueprint. And so one of the aspects that I wrote out is, what am I tolerating in my life around money? Because any aspect that I have around money that I'm not happy with is an element that I'm tolerating. And then once I get clear on what I'm tolerating, then I can get clear on well, what's my actual minimum standard here? Because we'll always operate at our minimum standard, and we'll strive to operate above it, but we'll always be at our minimum. And then I answer the question, what do I choose to believe in this area of my life in order for this minimum standard to be true for me? And so writing all those things out, and then continuing to revisit those elements to remind myself, because I write all this stuff out, and then when I read it the next day, I already forgot 90% of what I wrote. I'm like, oh, that's right. Oh, I have been thinking those things. Oh, I was just thinking that earlier. And so it's this constant reminder and refresher of, where do I need to keep my thoughts consistently so that my emotions are staying aligned to whatever it is I'm calling in, because that's going to be my point of attraction.
Amazing. You mentioned the financial blueprint. I'm like, maybe we need a positivity blueprint, but that's for another conversation. We love having you here, Tammy.
I've had this, like, I could talk to you for hours. So, I mean, because it's so awesome. I know I have all these questions going in my mind, but then I say our time we're gone over, and we want to honor your time.
Well, let me make one final point here, just to tie this in, because I don't want it to be confusing for anybody listening. I choose to maintain a very positive outlook on my life. However, I don't ignore the variety of emotions that come with that. And so falling back into that practice, if there is a stress or an anxiety or an anxiousness or a fear or anything that shows up, I still witness it. I still allow myself to feel it. And I allow it to move through me. What I don't do is sink my hooks into it and start to form a story around it and let it spiral me out of control for the next day or week of my life. And that's where we tend to go wrong, right? But I also don't ignore the feeling. I don't act like, oh no, everything's great, everything's great, everything's great. No, because everything's not great. There are certain elements of my life that are just not where I desire them to be. And so being able to sit with those, own them, take responsibility for what it is, and start to get really clear on how I want to evolve that. I mean, that's my responsibility. That's my work, but also allowing myself to feel everything that comes along with that, and then choosing what I do want to put my hooks into to pull me in the direction that I want to go.
It's how we respond to those difficult times.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate, is there anything you want to let our audience know, where to find you, if you have retreats, anything that you want?
Oh, you just follow me on Instagram, Arvin_Anderson.
Okay.
That's where I do all my information.
Yeah. So it's been great to have you, Arvin. I love your energy. I love your poise, and also your authenticity. You are, like you said, you're an open book, and I love it. Thank you for your messages. And we're gonna end this live again. And I want to ask you, Arvin, if you can stay for 1 or 2 minutes after we close the live. And if you want Arvin again, just say we want him again. Give us a thumbs up. That's what we're going to do backstage. Extend another invitation. But anyways, we are so happy to be here. We love this Tuesday Talks, and we're excited for next week. And Tammy, you want to close it?
We just appreciate everybody that's watching and listening. And, it's kind of like, Arvin, do you have a last challenge for everybody for leaving? It's like you had mentioned before, sometimes those questions that are hard to ask. Is there anything challenge that you would like to offer our audience for the week?
We usually end up with a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. My challenge to you would be to take 5 minutes a day and sit with a practice of called I feel. And the practice, all you're doing is with every exhale, just saying something that you feel, whether it's a physical sensation or an emotional sensation. Because most of the time somebody asks you, how you doing? You're like, oh, I'm good. I'm great. I'm all right. Those aren't emotions. So like, what are you feeling? Like, I feel nervousness in my stomach. I feel anxiety. I feel unseen. I feel optimistic. I feel cramping in my leg. I feel disconnected. I feel lost. And start getting really in tune with what you're feeling, because it's your compass. And the more specific and detailed you can be around what those actual feelings are, the more clarity you can create with the direction that you want to go.
Awesome. What a great challenge. Thank you so much.
5 minutes a day is to write it down then, right?
No, don't write it. Just sit.
Just okay.
Sit and feel.
Just sit. Every exhale is I feel, right? So I breathe in.
Express it.
I feel calm. I breathe in. I feel anxious. And that's the interesting thing about feelings is they'll just change, right? They'll just change. You're just like, oh, I was feeling this. Now I'm feeling this. Now I'm like, oh, wow, I'm all over the place.
And you can feel calm about this conversation right now with Arvin, and then you can feel anxious about something else in your life. So we're complex beings.
And we sure are, aren't
we? We have a soul. Well, thank you so much, Arvin, and we'll see you next week. We're gonna be here with another amazing guest, right, Tammy?
Yes, we are. So, and we'll be posting that in our Facebook forum here. So we will talk to you guys later. So thanks. I hope everyone has a great week. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.